On a serious note, though, it's really important to see people in the community coming out to learn about these issues, because these issues in some ways affect us more than the candidates we're going to be voting on. And this is going to have a huge impact on the future of Georgia's education. And it's going to be a big determinant in whether or not we move forward or we fall back. My name is David Smith, and I'm the president of the Young Democrats of Muscogee County. Let me introduce to you some of our members. This is Patrick Chappelle. He is the vice president of the Young Dems of Muscogee County. That's Mary Chen. She's the treasurer of the Young Dems of Muscogee County. And if you look in the back, that handsome gentleman with the yellow font is Harry Underwood, the communications director for the Young Democrats. So, and the reason that we felt it was appropriate for the Young Democrats to do this is because of the fact that as Young Democrats, education has a huge impact on our future and the future of the rest of our friends and family. I would also like to give a big thank you to Representatives Carolyn Hughley and Debbie Buckner, who were instrumental in helping us get this forward. Believe it or not, this whole thing started in a Zaxby's parking lot. And Debbie doesn't know this because I called her on the phone and I said, I want to do something about opportunity school districts. Hold on one second. I'd like a large chicken finger plate with honey mustard sauce. But and that's where it all got started. And Debbie and I have been working on this for months, trying to get this set up and everything. And I just appreciate her patience and her dedication to everything. And Carolyn, helped us get this room and invited people as well. And I'm just really, really appreciative. So let me, I will call up, and I want to introduce to you our speaker, Diana Daughtry. Diane Daughtry, she is a former educator, and she has been traveling around the state talking about why we need to vote no on opportunity school districts. She has been, as an educator, she can see firsthand the kind of things that this is going to do to Georgia schools and why we all need to give Amendment 1 a resounding no. And so, without further ado, Ms. Diane Daughtry.
And by the way, my name is Doherty, like the county.
Oh.
You know, nobody in Georgia can pronounce it. I don't get it, but we're the only family in Ohio. I couldn't be more thrilled to be here. I've been ready since about 7 o'clock last night when I found out that this was a possibility. I was a nun. I worked in the Catholic school system most of my life as a sister, as a lay person at the Archdiocese. And I had a firsthand experience of outside monies coming in and from the top down, rearranging the furniture in a system of which you were no longer a part. And so I worked for 11 years in the public school system in Fayette County. And the same thing happened. I call it the rug is pulled out under our feet. We are so busy, we don't know what the plans that are being made for us. And in addition to this, there was the mortgage crisis. And in addition to that, 2 governors took over $13 billion out of a school budget. So when I was there, of course, I was thrilled because as a teacher, they accepted all of my education. And I was one of the highest paid in the school. But for the 5 years that were left, we got no increase in payment. Coming from a Catholic school system, I didn't think anything of that because we didn't get paid. But in the public school, that was unusual. And the reasons had to do with the mortgage crisis and the incoming tax benefits. I learned what difference this made. But what I also learned is that while the school I was in was 3% free and reduced lunch when I came, by the end, it was 99% free and reduced lunch because Fayetteville had built schools and rearranged boundaries. So the children in our school ended up being mostly Black or Hispanic. Now, they weren't really Black. They were refugees. We had 34 different first speaking nations in the school. But it didn't make a difference to that county because they made an effort to educate every child. We didn't lay off teachers. We manipulated and maneuvered things so that nobody lost their job, no one lost an income. Those who were at the lower end, like the bus drivers and the clerks, ended up paying more for their benefits. But that school board worked so hard to keep everything leveled out. They sold property, they manipulated schools, they did everything they can, so we didn't feel anything. And they said, this will all come back. And it did. Fast forward to our experience now. When the governor took so much money out of the system, they said we couldn't help it. The school systems that could balanced. Others were unable to make that difference. And those who were unable to make that difference furloughed teachers. Bus drivers were outsourced, so they lost their jobs. Cafeteria workers lost their jobs and were rehired at the lower end. And this was a trickle down all the way through the system. And I thought, isn't this interesting? People are being made poor because of decisions that are made to quote unquote save money. So my ears perked up and I said, is it really necessary? A couple years ago, after I retired, and I am a priest, a Roman Catholic priest. I'm also excommunicated because I'm a woman. But I said, if I can make an effort, that's what I'm going to do. I'll make this difference. Mm-hmm. The gospel that we promote is one that bends toward the poor. In the Old Testament, in Isaiah, there's a quote that says, anyone who extracts wealth from the poor for their own benefit is an abomination. And this sits with me because my wealth came from my little city that put everything into us so that we would have a foundational education. And of course, that's what sisters did. They worked for nothing. And then we had lay teachers that got a little something more. And we worked it up so that it was like a cell. You serve those who are the poorest. And eventually you build that up because everybody is working for each other. This system that's not going to happen. In this system, what is going to happen if people vote yes is they will give authority to the governor to take away local control, which is not what they say on the news. And when you have local control, like I come from the Catholic system, I know what it means when there's no local control. There's a group that says this is going to be done and you can talk and fight and argue all you want, but they're going to do whatever they want. You have local control in the public school system, and it is for the benefit of all students equally. When that's given away to the governor, he is free to do whatever he wants. The rhetoric that is being spoken will be different from the actual experience of what will happen after January 1st. This constitutional amendment is a political takeover. It is a power grab. How does that happen? You will have no say in who the superintendent is. You will have no power to deal with the decisions of this superintendent. You can sit at meetings from now until kingdom come, but if they don't want to listen to you, if they don't want to hear what you have to say, then it's like sitting stone in front of a meeting. They're going to go do what they want to do. And that is the power that you're giving them. If you want to protest, if you want to come down to meetings, if you want to gather the rest of the community together, you can put all that energy out. But that won't change their mind because they have plans. This political appointee will be given the power to fire all teachers and principals. I would be the first fired because I'm old, I have a higher salary than any, and I'm an excellent teacher, so my mouth would not be shut. I would not be, as they call, malleable under the system that is planned. This amendment provides zero oversight and accountability for how the power is used. And I'll tell you some, when we get to the slideshow, you'll see how this has been used and abused in other states. If a decision is made when you give that yes to the governor, there is no oversight of what he's going to do. All you can do is pull your hair out at the decisions that will be made. Does he know what they'll be made? Does he know what decisions will be made? No. Does he know what the superintendent that he's going to appoint will do? No. Does he know what the for-profit corporation that is going to come in to manage these schools will do? No. If you asked him for a detailed list of what the plan was, he can't give it to you because he doesn't know. They're not hired. They're not vetted. They're business people. They're not educators. So in the business world, 3 teachers can be hired for me at a lower pay. Who will suffer? The children who do not have the expertise of a well-formed educator. What will take my place are computers. My big question was, if it's a for-profit company that comes in and they are not putting 1 penny more into the school system, how do you make a profit? So let's say one of your schools is taken over. The funds are shifted to a for-profit corporation. They fire teachers, hire at lower pay. Don't have to buy books. They use computers. They use extreme forms of discipline, which has been used in the past, to make sure the kids are obedient. And perhaps the worst to me is they will sell off some schools and double up on others. Transportation will probably be your responsibility, but it will be taken out of the local district's budget. Remember, there's no money going into this. So anything that it costs to organize it and to operate it and to run it is from your school system. And in addition to that, they are working to make a profit from it. Really important things to keep in mind. The opposition says you can speak. We will have local conversations. There will be local control. After November 8th, there won't be any. After the school is taken over, there won't be any. Before that, you can talk, but remember, the plan's already going to be made by someone other than the governor. The most important thing for people to do is read the fine print. If you haven't seen the language, read it. The language is a power grab by bureaucrats. And how did this start? Out-of-state money came into Georgia. It was 2008, and I read a little blurb in a newspaper about a billionaire in California who was going to put in $2,500 in the Atlanta Public Schools election for a school board member. I thought, well, that's the weirdest thing I ever heard. $2,500 for a school board member? And I laughed, and I thought, well, I can't figure out, what are they doing? Why would they do that? And then I realized that this was the beginning of a strategic plan. And I started reading more about Michigan, Louisiana, Tennessee, Wisconsin, and all of the money that has been thrown in those states through the legislatures. But in terms of it, it's called the Global Education Reform Movement, GERM. It is YouTube, GERN. And following it is a gentleman from Finland who explains how this movement is a global movement to take over schools, not just in the US, but all over, in order to privatize education. Standardized tests, globalized education, takeover of systems that are not strong. They slide in through these small little openings, school boards, legislative positions, but it is actually a wholesale sellout of our children to corporations. And that is what really bothers me. This is a drastic moment. Don't think about it in easy terms. This is drastic. And this is what really got me out of my home and from doing laundry and enjoying my retirement. I am actually refired because there's no responsibility. They take no responsibility for the failure of these schools because the purpose is to break up public education. Doesn't make a difference if it fails or if it succeeds. They want to break it up. And public education as we know it will be no longer. A school takeover will not help. It will harm our children. Think about who is not for this. The PTA, teachers, educators, local communities, leaders from all across Georgia are saying we don't want this. Why weren't we asked? How come we're finding out? I don't know about you, but I was in the legislature when charter schools was part of the legislation, and I thought, what is all this about? I really didn't understand it on the issue of charter schools. And then the Opportunity School District slid in with 1 vote in the Senate and 2 votes in the House. And people really didn't know what it was, but who wrote the legislation? That was my question. Who's for it? Lobbyists. Out-of-state corporations support it. Why? My tax dollars, your tax dollars will foot the bill for all of it. They don't have to put 1 penny in it. But they can make a profit on the loss or the gain. I think that's unfair. And it is mostly unfair to the children. And how will they do this? Set up a bureaucracy. We have a school board. We have a superintendent. They are duly elected and they're trying their best to do what they can do to raise up these schools. What will this extra additional bureaucracy do? What will they do? The governor can't do it unless the Constitution, the language of the Constitution is changed. I read the constitutional language. The governor already has the power to improve schools. That's his job. So why did they write the language the way it was? Because they're banking on people not reading it or understanding what it means. This amendment is going to cut funding from the public schools. 3% of every local school district will go into the operation of a bureaucracy. What can we do with that 3%? In addition, you will pay for the transportation of kids, the school and all of its maintenance, even if they close the school. Let's say, I think, how many schools are involved here? I think there are between 6 and 8. We'll look at it's coming up here so that you can see. You're still footing the bill for it, whether a child's in the school or not. You have to do complete maintenance and upkeep. Plus, pay for all the kids that have gone to other areas. I think it's very clever on their part. I wish I were so smart, but I am not. So now I would like to get to this PowerPoint that I made, and anybody that wants a copy, I have sent it to David, and he can just send it over to you. And this will tell you a little bit more about, and actually clarify what I've just said. There you go. So it's a multi-pronged attack. That's very important. This isn't just going in and taking it over. He is going to take away the local schools from your local school board, and the taxpayers will be responsible for all the upkeep, but he will own, and all authority will be invested in his office. You will have no say after January 1st. Well, really, November 2nd, November 9th. So it fundamentally changes the principles of democracy. This is what's wrong with it, and how we will educate our children in the future, because if he can start with this, he can move on. I thought it was really an important thing to highlight that we are not obligated to pay for private education, which is what this will become. We are obligated to pay for public education, and each of those schools, because they are separate entities, will no longer be considered public education. This is what the Constitution says the responsibility of our governor is. The provision of an adequate public education for the citizens shall be the primary obligation of the state of Georgia. All citizens are to be educated. But the constitutional language gives us authority of the state to assume supervision, management, operation of elementary and secondary schools. And that authorization will include the power to receive control, expend the state, federal, and local funds appropriated for the school under the current or prior supervision and management that will be operated by the Opportunity School District. That is a total change. There's the question. Chronically failing schools. The governor will then if this passes, be given the right to bring in. They will be not-for-profit. That's what he says. These will be not-for-profit schools. But he will hire a for-profit company to run them. And that's where there will be no control over them. So these are the areas that are affected. And that's where they are all around the state. And I thought that there were some schools in this county. Oh, there you go, 8. To me, this is like taking the heart out of a community. You just rip it out and pass it over to someone else. It's like giving the heart of your community to another recipient. Governor can do with those 8 schools one of 4 things. The governor can close the school. The governor can take it over and run it. This is interesting. The governor can share the governance with the governor's office and school board. That's a possibility. Or he can convert it to a school charter run by a nonprofit. Generally speaking, that 4th option is what he'll do. And the nonprofits will be, again, operated as a whole unit by a for-profit company. Special needs children. Generally speaking, they are not welcomed in a opportunity school district because there's costs, additional costs. They get extra money to do this, but they don't want to spend that money on the needs of those children. Busing in other places has been the responsibility of the local school district. In New Orleans, it was $300 before the school district. After their recovery school district, it went up to $1,200. It became so costly, they gave bus vouchers. And we'll talk a little bit about New Orleans later. But with every constellation of how this works out, it becomes more problematic for those that have to, that are in the districts. You're responsible for the building and maintenance and after school care. It will be outsourced at your own expense. And those are the people who are probably less likely able to do it. So I did some research on Louisiana, Tennessee, and Michigan and how that model worked. In New Orleans, just a few, this is just a very brief outline. After 10 years, 6% of the seniors in high school scored well enough in English and math to go to a 4-year college or university. Once these schools And one of the things that I thought was most tragic was when they fired all the teachers, they hired young white teachers and lost the wealth of the culture of the black educator in New Orleans. When you get this, go to these YouTube videos and you can see and witness, as a documentary, the sad stories and narratives that came out of New Orleans. And again, this is not going to be us because they had a crisis. The takeover happened, they were experimenting, lots of mistakes were made, but you can see the terror and the exhaustion that it caused the people in the schools that were taken over. That's what you should come out with. Does the governor have a better plan? No, he hasn't said he does. He hasn't even said which 10 or 20 schools will be targeted.
What I thought was interesting is after this initiative, people went back to the old traditional model because they feel local schools are a better way to manage education for children in communities. Oops. Tennessee last year had a bill to end it. It's only been in for 5 years. $1 billion they spent. $1 billion. The money just, they said it was like a water flowing out of the state and into the pockets of other people. The superintendent resigned. There are many lawsuits because of the way that the money was spent. And Vanderbilt did a study that was published in December of 2015, so that's recently, that the Achievement School District is not even as effective as other school districts. And that's after 5 years of operation. Why would we even try it? In Michigan, this is the saddest story of all. 3 years of their Education Achievement Authority, the state board unanimously said it is a failure. People, teachers, families, everybody's opting out of it. What hurt me the most was there was a for-profit organization at Muscogee Heights School District that wanted to make a profit, but in April they couldn't, so they pulled out. So what happens if this for-profit company comes in and can't make the profit that they're thinking of? They leave, and where do the kids go? Where do the parents go? Is this something we really want for our children and for our communities? I don't think so. They also have spent $1 billion. I've learned to press the right button. This is what concerns me the most. These are Black and brown families. If we do this, we will create the largest racial divide that the South has known, or that Georgia has known. It will be a separate and unequal system. That's not a company deciding they're not going to follow civil rights or human rights. This is an entire system, and you saw how many schools. It will start out small, but it'll spread like a virus all the way through the country. So, the road ahead, I see two roads ahead. We can impose a costly bureaucracy, or we can work with district leaders to identify solutions. Why can't we do that? Just do it. That's my motto, damn it, do it. So the Department of Education that we already have has a turnaround team. And this is why I don't understand why we haven't heard as much about this. 198 out of 233 schools they worked with over a period of 3 years turned around. That's a little piece of missing information. More money will be spent, out of state money, to secure the passage of this amendment. It is coming from private interests that see this as a business opportunity. They wouldn't do it if they didn't think they'd reap a great reward. You can't see this very well, but I found a place in a book called The Reign of Error by Diane Radlich. And it's on this slide, so you don't have to write it down. She lists all of the corporate monies or some of the corporate monies, that are coming into Georgia in order to create educational reform. It's very interesting. So what can we do? Call to action. You've been informed a little bit. You have a lot more information probably than I do. David Perdue, who is the Republican representative for the House of, I see someone weeping, won the campaign because they did not attend to the large cities in Georgia. The Republican campaign strategized and went to the rural areas outside. This is a nonpartisan issue. This is not a Democratic or Republican issue. This is an issue of the future of education for our children. I would consider the areas around here to be quite rural. How can we get them informed? In a church, I go to churches and I say, you cannot tell them, a church, people, how to vote, but you can give them information about what will happen if this if this goes through. That's why I made this. It helps people study what the issues are. We need to ask the governor to go back to the drawing table and to include us, include our local communities. If there is money and resources available for this campaign and it was used to help these schools, we probably wouldn't have a problem. But I also go to the UN for an initiative they have, which is called Partner Exchange. And they're working on initiatives to help poor nations collaborate with those of wealth and find benefits for both. That's a conversation we haven't had. So we're asking the governor, come back to the drawing table and listen to us. Bring the partners and let's, yes, they need to make profit because that's the energy, that's their gift. But they don't need to extract wealth out of the poor. They don't need to make these communities poorer. They don't need to exacerbate racism. They don't need to, 10 years from now, say, oops, I think I made a mistake. We can't afford to do that, and this will be a huge error. There are some numbers. You saw Keep Georgia Schools Local. This is our campaign. It's a coalition. We need money. We don't have any. But, we are doing one meeting at a time, 2 meetings a day, trying to get this word out. If each of you would take this sheet and just go to the references at the bottom, read up, take this PowerPoint, and go to these rural areas, I think it would make an enormous, enormous difference. Have people come from your neighborhood and say, we got a serious problem here. Teachers cannot talk about this, nor can the superintendent, the superintendent and the board, the school board is going to vote on this, I hear. But there is some opposition. But again, if there's opposition, get the facts. What is the opposition? Look at what the end results, start from the end, and look at what's going to happen. And why all the outside money? Is someone paying them? I keep asking that. I have a research that you should read, and it's on the second page that I gave you. It's called Research on Community Schools and How Local Control Can Bring Needed Results. There is a marvelous research by the Annenberg Foundation, and you can, it's called Investing in What Works. I don't think the governor's read it, but it would be good if the legislators read it too. There's really excellent information about organizations that have worked with communities
in states across this nation, and they have brought schools that are on this quote-unquote low end of achieving. Another is Measure for America. This is devastating, absolutely a devastating report. It goes through every state in the nation, major cities, and it is a numbers crunch of youth who have been disconnected by race, ethnicity, and gender. One of the facts they failed to give you in boasting about New Orleans and how the communities are better is one of the ways they made it better is using a method called creaming, push-out. If a child misbehaves, isn't doing their homework, they push them out. If a child is special needs and they don't want to hire those that are needed to serve them, they cream them. They don't let them in the first place. They only take the best at the top. Those are unrecognized practices that keep your scores and results high. The statistic for Measure of America is written right there. In New Orleans, 26,000 children between the ages of 16 and 24, and that would be during the 10 years this was tried, are walking around the streets of New Orleans uneducated, no graduates, and no jobs, but they're uncounted. They're disconnected. Sandy Plains here, or I'm not Sandy Plains, Sandy Springs and Roswell, this really surprised me. In that area, 111,000. So we have kids that we have not served or are not serving. And we need to reach out and become better because we can. We are a creative people. We can do this, folks. The third treatise that is there is on generational poverty. Every one of these schools, there's 68,000 children altogether. That's the statistic that's used. Of the 68,000, there is an average of 40,000 single parents that are, and they're mostly women, of these children. It isn't the school that is the problem. For-profit schools will not address generational poverty. But the corporations in Georgia can attack the needs these local communities have, be it transportation, poor health, low wages. What if people made enough money so they didn't have to have 3 or 4 jobs? That's a concept. So those are that's what we need the governor to address. And we have the women from the Atlanta Women's Foundation on it. They've made the research and they put it out there, and you can grab it and give them the agenda. And the last is from Rise Up Georgia. It's from the Center of Popular Democracy. It's called Whose Opportunity? And what they did was they went to the Atlanta Public Schools and they did a study of where the money's coming from for this turnaround. And then they went outside of Atlanta Public Schools and said, is there any success in any state that has used this approach? And that is 0. So if these are not successful in turning around systems, what makes us think that it will be successful? But what will be successful is us. After the election, if this is defeated, which I'm hoping it will be, our work begins. You've got 8 schools there. What is it that they need? It'll draw a whole new generation of energetic people that will look at the issues that are surrounding the communities and solve it. Because we've got two women back there, they'll take your message right to Governor Beal, and he will say, "Oh, yes, ma'am, I'll do whatever you say." I'd be glad to. So right now, if you have your own questions, I would be glad to listen to them. Yes, sir. And if you'll tell your name.
My name is Ed Wilson.
Ed Wilson.
I'm a former citizen. My question has to do with what criteria under Amendment 1, what criteria would the governor have to follow in selecting a school to take over and control?
Very good.
And along with that, would this apply at the individual school level, or would it apply to a system?
It applies to, I'll do the second one first. It applies to each school. And there is a test that is given called a College Career Readiness Inventory. It is a test that is given to schools to find out where the major weaknesses are, and was formerly used by the state superintendent to strengthen the weaknesses. The governor decided that that would be the test that is used as a cutoff. If you get 60 or below, you are on a list, quote unquote. If you're on it 3 years in a row, then you're part of his district. Your schools, all 8 of them, have been on this 3 years in a row. And I have also given David a list of the schools, and I believe it gives their scores for the 3 years. Now, you can see where those schools are, and you can just make your own judgment as to why their schools are low. Scores are low. If that changes and the schools improve to such a degree that they get off the list, and the governor doesn't have any schools for his opportunity school district, he has the ability, once he has the power, to raise the ante. He can make 80 the cutoff. And actually, once he has the power, he can take all of them. He doesn't have to have a test. He can just say, "I want your school." That's the danger of changing the language of a constitution. Good question. Yes.
I'm Carolyn Hughley, State Representative for House District 136. I just want to add a little bit to the conversation. The House Democratic Caucus worked very hard to try and beat this amendment before it ever made it to the voter, and it's for the reasons that you discussed. But in addition to that, what you've already discussed is the fact that if you believe that Governor Deal has the magic bullet, the question becomes, why wouldn't he just share it with everybody without us going to office? Yes. The second thing is the fact that if this amendment passes, by the time everything goes through for the governor to act, he's going to be going out of office. We don't know who the next governor will be, or the governor after that, or the governor after that. And once we change this Constitution, we don't know what will happen. And then the most disturbing thing of all is, even after a school gets on the Opportunity School District list and they come to take over the school, there is no way out. If the schools improve and get above the bar, they can never go back. Once the governor takes them over, there is no going back. So that lets you know it's not about helping schools to improve. Because if it were, there will be some mechanism for the schools to go back to local control, to go back to the current status. So I just wanted to share that in addition to what you are. And thank you for your presentation.
Oh, you're welcome, and that's really an interesting thought. You know, the for-profit community is a capitalistic venture capitalist organization. They, in 1994, began private prisons, the private prison movement. They have made trillions, $3 trillion, $3.7 trillion on it. The latest statistic for that, for the number of beds to increase the shares for the shareholder, is kids who cannot read between 11 and 14. And so this is what really concerns me. You think a for-profit educational organization is going to have the motivation to teach our children and make their education better. I can't see it. Yes.
I'm Debbie Buckner. I'm state representative for House District 137. And just to tag team with my colleague, Representative Hewlett, I think it's important for people to realize there is already a law in place that allows the governor to step in with our communities with schools in need. He has done it in Clayton County, Cobb County, and Fulton. There's also an organization called the SAC, Southern Association of Accredited Colleges. And they are available to go into schools and help them get themselves back on track. So this is not needed for the express purposes that are coming out of the other side of this issue. There's already
Yes.
Is there a list with the names of the actual students?
Yes.
I can send it to anybody that
Yes.
You might make it go smaller, but not actually push it back. That's what it seems like. Giving someone the opportunity to make a bunch of money, to keep back or at least at the expense of people.
Yeah, I kind of get the idea that we're not counted unless you have two representatives like the girls back there. So we need more. We need more women and policy making. Yes, I wish I were younger because that's where I'd be. And men, young men that understand that this ends up ultimately being a women's issue because these are the children. So I have a suggestion. Oh, if we vote against this amendment and it passes, what can we do as parents, as a community, to assure people, if we know there is this problem, that we can stop this problem from coming back, happening again, and this coming about a second time. The revolution will not be announced. I mean, that's the only thing we can do with the revolution. And also, pay attention to who's on the ballot for legislature. Because legislators do this too. Yes.
Not the legislature.
Yes.
I'm Sydney Wilson, and I believe you said that our Muscogee County School Board is getting ready to vote on it.
Yes, I read it in the newspaper. It was supposed to be last Tuesday, but they haven't done it
We did too late. And so when they vote, let's say they vote no, hopefully, then what questions are run out to our schools or even the aides?
yet. It's only their advisory to this. It's in your pocket. It's the voters.
They'll know that the school board doesn't want it. If the school board doesn't want it, why would they?
So the word needs to get out.
Word needs to get out, and I think there are two.
There's we actually have a school board member, Pat Higley Green, right there in the back. She can talk about what's about what the Muscogee County School District Board is going to vote on, and all of that kind of stuff.
You're talking actually about a resolution. The board could consider a resolution that says, as a board, we do not support the Amendment 1. It's not on our agenda to take it up. But that's all it would be, is just that as a board, we say we don't support it. It does not supersede what you have to do as a voter, which is to go to the polls, take your neighbors to the polls, and exercise your right to vote. It would just be a statement of unity for our board.
I thought you were going to do it.
It was, it's been proposed, but it was not on the agenda. It's not on the agenda for a vote.
So individual members are.
I don't know if you are for it, but yes, individually we are, you know.
If the people here called the school board members and asked to have it on the ballot,
You mean on the agenda?
on the agenda. All right, there you go. My idea is to take these and put them, you know, if you're going to the beauty shop, barber shop, display them on a table, ask people to put them in the windows, gas stations, grocery stores, just keep them in the car and pass them around. I think that's an easy way to make sure that it's up.
You mind if I make a comment too?
No. Why?
I'm Tyler Rock. And for 31 years, I was employed by the Muscogee County School. 26 of those years, I served as a principal of 2 different elementary schools and 2 middle schools. I'm kind of the Pied Piper for the Professional Association of Georgia,
Thank you so much for your service.
which kept this state going, being run by the union back 25 years ago. So I've got an awful lot of experience behind it. But the bottom line to it is that this proposal may be mad on my table because it is not in the best interest of children. And kids should be the only business of the school. It has to. And this is the message we've got to get out to the family, get out to the voter. Because once we get into political, then we got a whole different ballgame that you do. So what I'm saying to you is I'm not in favor of this proposal. And I suggest that every one of you leave here with some kind of idea of not. One thing that we have that most of the states in Georgia don't have is that we have got an outstanding school system in Muscogee County. Now, I've had 7 superintendents during my tenure here in Muscogee County. I wish to goodness I'd have had a David Lewis and something wrong with one of those. In fact, after I watched some of what he had in mind, I almost didn't have it. I don't really need to do that. And he has expanded the reach of the school because he has provided classroom education for those children that are difficult to learn. And I never worked a year in my life that we didn't have difficult to learn children. We look at special ed, and there are a lot of things you can do within special education. But what about those that come from dysfunctional homes? Homes where there's no man in the house. Number two, it had never been. There's those where you have to deal with parents that are drunks or they're addicts. I mean, all of these things are compiled into that precious little child that comes to school. And I remember the first education course that I ever took in college. The teacher walked in and said, before you commit yourself to this profession, realize that those smiling faces and those bright eyes are the future. Educators, they are the future convicts, they are the potential president of this United States. You don't know what you're dealing with until you put those children with people who care about them. So I'm saying to you, when you get ready, and I hope you do, I hope you carry this brochure, take it everywhere you can. I'm going to leave one in front of my preacher. and I don't think he'll address it. But the bottom line to it is that we've got to make sure that this doesn't happen. It has not happened in states where it's been tried. It's been good for nothing. The only thing it does is it keeps the money available. Let's teach kids in our school. And let's make sure we stand up for what the children need and not for what some politician who may or may not have a brainstorm is talking about.
Thank you very much for that comment. It's about time for us all to wrap up, but I want to say a couple of parting words before we do. I want to first of all thank Representatives Carolyn Hughley and Debbie Buckner for putting this together. Let's please give them a big round of applause. The Young Democrats of Muscogee County could not have done this without you, and we appreciate it so much. And I know I speak for myself, Patrick, Mary, Harry, and the other Young Democrats in the room. It really means a lot. And of course, I want to give a big thank you to Miss Diane for coming down here. She drove like 2 hours to get down here to speak to us. You know, this just shows her commitment to fighting this issue. You know, and it's voices like yours and voices like everybody else in this room that we need to go out and fight this amendment. Because there's a lot of people that are going to go in there and they're going to think, wow, this amendment sounds great. It's worded to where it's like, do you want to help the kiddies? Well, of course you do. And, you know, it's that kind of an amendment, but that's not the case. It's a dangerous amendment. It allows for government takeover of our local school systems. It brings in for-profit corporations. I know for a fact that I have learned so much tonight because of you, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. This has made me more firm in my opposition to this legislation. And I encourage everybody in this room to go out into the world and talk to 5 people and tell them why they need to vote against it. And then 5 more, and 5 more, and 5 more. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell your families, Republicans and Democrats, that they need to vote against this legislation. This isn't a partisan issue. Unfortunately, Democrats don't have very large minorities in the either house, and so a lot of Republicans voted against this legislation as well. And so this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue that needs to be talked about to everybody. So please go to your neighbors, your family, and your friends and talk about it. Also, before you all leave, let me let you know that the Muscogee County Democratic Party is having a debate and watch party tonight for the debate that's going to be happening between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And so it's going to be at the Macon Road headquarters, 3740 Macon Road. So just jump on this big old road out here and head up that way. And there will be a banner, and it's going to say Muscogee County Democrats. It's a gray building with a red wraparound near a Little Caesars and a Circle K. Yes, the old movie gallery. And so I encourage everybody to go leave from here now that you have all this knowledge. Go watch the debate, see that, and then go out to the polls, vote Democratic, and vote no on Amendment 1. Thank you all so much for coming out.
Okay.
Looking your finest. And then if you take a picture of David. Oh, isn't that beautiful?
I might want to do a panoramic shot too.
Oh, what a good idea.
Yeah.
There we go. Smiling, everybody. Thank you. And also go to Keep Georgia Schools Local. We have some beautiful ads that we're putting out. And if you like to go on social media, just click that button and pass it to everybody.
All right.
Now, will you take one of them? One more.
All right.
I took a picture of the desk. You have to press that button.
All right.
It's a pleasure being with you. My new disciples.
You taking a picture of me right now?
Oh no, I'm streaming it live. Yeah, on Facebook. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like. Yeah, I'm going there now. Yeah. Yeah. If my car doesn't stop. Yeah. And all right. Thank you. All right, we'll do it. Yeah. Hi. Oh, excuse me. Did you want to do like I'm just streaming this live on Facebook. I was gonna. Would you be interested in like just answering a few questions about like what this? No. Okay.
How do you get on that list to get that email presentations?
Try asking either the presenter or David Smith.
Which one is this guy?
Right in the black suit, gray and green jacket. But would you be interested in like just giving an idea of like how do you feel about the event tonight?
Yeah,
okay. All right. So, can I get your name?
Shaheed Muhammad.
Shaheed Muhammad.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Muhammad. Welcome. And like, how did you like this event tonight?
I thought it was very informative. A lot of information that got put out that you don't hear about every day. Media and things like that.
Right.
So I'm very glad I came out.
Okay, and also about the privatization thing, there was something about what she said that we're going from private prisons to like the privatization of education. Right. What did you? Is that something that you've seen in like commonly in Georgia as well, like in other areas?
No, I haven't seen it, but I've read about it in the news about charter schools and things like that. I think it's real dangerous to get outside entities make decisions on things that's happening in our community.
Right, and I know there was a movement to like push for charter schools in Washington D.C.
Right.
And that was like very controversial because you had a lot of Democrats also coming out in favor of it. And it's like, is that something that we need to fix too? Like for because of like how so many people in Atlanta or in D.C. or in other places are pushing for these charter schools and the privatization of education. And like, is that something that we like in the not just in the within the Democrats and progressives, but also in the African American community, because a lot of the people are also pushing for, and they're African American. They feel that this is supposed to be like some sort of means to gain better education.
Well, like the presentator was saying, I think it's mostly because of lack of information. All they're giving us is the cherry on top. They're not telling us everything that comes along with it. They're just telling us that, yeah, it's going to be better schools, yeah, it's going to be better this, but they're not telling us that at the expense of what it's going to be. And when is it going to stop? Who's going to be making these decisions?
Right.
So, yeah.
Indeed. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And,
no problem.
And our website, our Facebook page is on. Well, we have a Facebook page, Muscogee County Young Democrats. So that's what I was streaming this on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check it out, man.
All right. Thank you so much.
I'll be coming to some more of y'all events. I'm gonna follow y'all and see what else y'all got going on. Man.
Okay, because we're also having the debate watch tonight. Debate watch.
Yeah, I heard about that. I'm gonna check it out. I'll probably stop by there too. Man.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed.
No problem. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you. All right.
We will, we'll do the best